Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. Today on the podcast, we're back in Pennsylvania with a long-term runner from the 70s with great success, All-American, marathon winner over many distances, Hall of Famer, national champion as coach. We'll get to all those details, but somebody who's out there biking today. So we'll talk about life through the decades from 1970s with Jeff Bradley. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, it's nice to be here, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Very good to meet you. We may have met and been on the same course at some point, but let's talk about your origin story. When, where, and why did you become a racer?
I guess it's like a lot of people. I played football in ninth grade in our junior high and figured that a 105-pounder wasn't really what they were looking for in a football team. So I went out for cross country the next year at Hempfield High School in Landisville, Pennsylvania. I had success right off the bat. We had a good team, 2 district titles, 27-1. Great stuff happened at Hempfield. I met a lot of good people along the way. I got accepted to Delaware, Pitt. I was going to run for those schools, but then I did a co-op in engineering. I wanted to be an engineer, and I really didn't like it at all. The man that I was co-oping with was sitting behind a desk all day, and I said, I don't want to do that. When I was very active and energetic, and I thought, I can't do that. So maybe I could be a math teacher and a coach. Cy Fritz at Millersville University was in his second year of coaching at Millersville State College back then. He wanted me to come there, and I was running for the Lancaster AAU cross-country and track team too. The Millersville runners were all saying, Jeff, you got to come to Millersville. So I did. A great decision because we got some great people in that first year, and the success at Millersville really took off starting in 1970 when I started with that team. We got in George Ritter, Mark Stripe, Scott Mellinger, some real good people from Eastern Pennsylvania, and we ended up with 4 good years of running at the college.
Let's go back just before we leave high school. Hempfield, sound like you had a good coach.
I did. Andy Amway was a great coach. He was a real motivator. In track and field, my coach was okay. I never really met my coach. He just gave me a card every day, and I went out and did what he said. I ended up second in the state in 2-mile. In cross country, I never had great success. I was a league champ, 21st in the state. I never really had much luck. I just wasn't mature enough at that time, and I matured right after high school. Things really changed for me as far as cross country is concerned.
I think back in those days in Pennsylvania, the top 20 were all state. You were X+1?
Oh, yeah, I was one away. One from a medal. Isn't that terrible?
I think they expanded to 25. You'll know.
25 right now.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, I got a medal at 16 one year in the lower class, AA. It's a great thing to meet the people at that meet. At Hempfield, going into the district and then state meet, how big were those races those days?
Oh, our district meet was huge. District 3 was Harrisburg and New York, Reading and Chambersburg and Wilson. It was a big district. The district meet in cross country, we'd line up like 250 of us, and you'd run about 400 yards, and it would have a narrow gap that everybody had to run through. Oh my gosh, it was just crazy. It was at Vensky Park up in Reading, and nothing like it. Everybody was sprinting to get through that gap in time. So,
do you remember the state meet with State College then?
Oh yeah, I was up at Penn State every year for that. And it was cold, always cold. Oh gosh, it was cold. I was a better hill runner, and there weren't a lot of hills on that course. Give me some big hills. My success in life always came on hilly courses, not flat ones. And Penn State was pretty flat and fast.
Yeah, the weather back then, that was usually by the first weekend in November, but
And
that
I
was
think same
cold.
as
That
it
was
is now.
cold days.
It
Oh yeah,
was, and it's before climate change. It was really cold.
that's
Yeah.
great. What kind of student were you in high school? You're obviously thinking about an academic career.
Yeah, I was National Honor Society, an AB student.
Let me ask you about that. Sometimes we've had people who had the experience with teammates that say the cross country team was a bunch of book guys
Oh
and
yeah.
good students. And then we have the culture of some of the runners of the era who were like, I did whatever I could do just to get through so I could run. Like,
That's really a great question because at Millersville, we had a lot of 4.0 students on the cross country team. But in high school, my coach, Andy Amway, was a good coach, but he was able to draw people from all areas. We had the academic kids, we had the general kids, we had the business kids. He really did a great job of getting a cross section, and we were not a nerdy team in cross country in high school. But I saw that later on. I coached for many years in cross country and track, and I find the cross country teams have a lot of nerdy kids, but they're the kids that are going to be successful in life.
that's right. All right, 27-1. Do you remember that loss?
Oh, yeah, I do. It's against Solanco. My first year, I had just missed 2 weeks of running because of bad shin splint. I came back, and one of my other teammates just had a bad meet too, and we didn't run particularly well. We lost that meet, but about 2 or 3 weeks later in the league meet, we just destroyed everybody. Just had a fantastic league championship. Then we won leagues that year, won districts, and we're probably like 11th or 12th at states. So we had a great team that year.
Nice. Once you got to Millersville, went from probably maximum 2.5 mile races. Were you running other races on the roads?
Yeah, because I was a member of the Lancaster AAU, I was introduced to a little bit longer running by the Millersville guys that I was running with. That track club was really a lot of fun, and we would do relays together. I did a 15K, and I remember a guy named Moses Mayfield. Do you remember that name? He was the African American long distance runner. I think he did really long distance. I was really impressed by him and some of the other people in some of the races we were running. So yes, I was introduced to some longer running. So when I went to college, it was really pretty cool. In high school, we did a 5 mile race up at Harrisburg. God, what the name? It wasn't Capone. I did Capone in the summer, but right after the cross country season, and I beat a guy that had a Villanova shirt on, a 5 miler, and I just thought that was the greatest thing ever. I don't know if he went to Villanova, but he had a Villanova shirt on. I thought that was pretty cool. So I was ready for the longer distances.
What was your expectations and what was Millersville's expectations when you were a freshman there?
That's really a good question. I really was lost. I really didn't know what to expect. Seifritz didn't put a lot of pressure on us. Just do well in the classroom, show up to practice every day, and he'll take care of the rest. And I did, though I think I could have done a whole lot more. I did his workouts, and that was it. And I wish I would have done a little bit more. We all do. We all wish we would have trained a little bit harder when we had that chance. There weren't great expectations, but as the years went on, then we realized how good we could be. Then the expectations did start. When I went to Millersville, they were not a really good team. There were like 2 seniors on the team that were okay from the previous year, but they were maybe 6th or 7th in the conference the previous year. So winning was not yet in vogue at Millersville. Like in the next 15 years, it really became the place to go.
When you were there, that's the beginning of the 1970s. Before the running boom, what was on your radar when you arrived there in terms of the bigger world of running? The 72 Olympics hadn't hit yet. Were you following?
Oh, yeah.
The big guys?
Yeah. Also, I'll bring up some more names. I know you like to hear names. In the summertime, I had a good friend and a Volkswagen Beetle, And we would go down to East River Drive and West River Drive and Browning Ross. He was an icon in the Philadelphia area. We would do 5K races and 5-mile races on the East River Drive and West River Drive. When the race was over, or I put a table out, and he might have a cigarette lighter. He'd have some books. He might have some old trophies that he won. And the first place person, you go up there and you take whatever you want off the table. And I won a lot of those races, even in high school down in Philadelphia on East River Drive. I got to meet some really neat people that way. It did have more of an expanded world than just the Hempfield community.
Were you looking at the big guys from the 68 Olympics and the world of track? Was that something, were you a runner's world reader, any of that?
Yeah, I was. And I love Dave Waddle and Frank Shorter. I went to the Olympics in 1976 in my Volkswagen Beetle by myself and watched Frank Shorter and Sierpinski and Bruce Jenner. And that was pretty cool. In the 60s, yes, I did watch it, but I didn't know the people as well as I knew a few years later.
Let's talk about the competition. Just the one loss with the Hempfield team, and Millersville was becoming a big power, winning. Yeah. Apart from the progression through the state meet to nationals, how far afield did you travel? Were there other invitationals?
We really didn't. We went up to Bucknell for an invitational. I think we went down to Towson, Maryland, and we went up to Penn State and do the Penn State Invitational every year. And that told me that I had some potential, because I was running with some big guns up there at Penn State. I kept thinking, oh, I'm in their top 5 or 6 and I'm running for Millersville. But we didn't go too far afield for sure. And at Millersville, we were a good team. We had trouble beating Westchester in our conference, and we had trouble beating Edinboro. They were the 2 teams that we just couldn't seem to beat.
You were there with the Dave Antagnoli years?
I was behind Dave Antagnoli for 3 years, and then finally he graduated my senior year, and that's the year I won the 3-mile and 6-mile. I finished second to Dave Antagnoli in cross country the 2 times. Yeah. I was 6th, second, and first in the cross country. In track, I was second to him in the 3-mile in my sophomore and junior year. I was more of a miler, 3-mile. I always ran the mile and the 3, and he'd run the 3 and the 6.
Right. Did you get to know him personally?
Yeah, I would talk to him quite a bit. I haven't followed him since he graduated. And then in my sophomore year, we went out to the national NAIA meet in Kansas City, and Dave won, and I was 3rd in the national NAIA. So, that was a huge surprise. I had run the NCAA meet a week earlier. I had just a terrible cold. I was terrible. I finished 42nd in the cross country out there. That was university division. It was division 2 and 3 combined. And I just ran a terrible race. So Cy Fritz, he didn't say a word to me until we got home, and he said, Jeff, would you like to try this one more time? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. So we hopped on a plane and headed out to Kansas City. That was probably my breakout race in college. I had done well in track at the end of my freshman year. It's interesting. I ran 4:14 just like you did. And I was second to Dave Antagnoli with a 14:15 for 3 miles. And then they took me out to California to run in the NCAA University Division track meet. Back then, we had to qualify to go out to that. So we ran a race up in Teaneck, New Jersey. A guy named Ron Stonich was in the race, and I got second to him, and then I qualified for the national meet. So we went out to Sacramento, where the Olympic trials were held later on. And I got to run in the NCAA meet out there. Great stuff.
Did you have teammates in some of the events at that track meet?
At nationals, yes, I had teammates, but they were not runners. They were Carl Bivens won the discus, and shot putter Wayne Geltz. He placed 5th in the shot put. So I came back without a medal. But there were some really good people. I'll never forget a guy from Eastern Michigan, Gordon Minty, who was from England. And oh my gosh, he was so good. My eyes were open when I went out to that national meet, and I'd watch them running the trials in the mile, and they were running 4:05s and 4:07s in the trials, just coasting. I'm thinking, whoo, this is a little different than the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference.
You certainly got your identity. It was pretty easy to switch from I'm not a football player to a runner.
Yeah.
You had your entire career, great success at Millersville. You set records. I think you're in the Millersville Hall of Fame. You have accomplishments that nobody's matched yet with your ability to run 9 miles in a weekend meet and win everything. But what did you think about what was going to happen on graduation and running? What was the world looking like then?
Great question. In track of my senior year, I had stress fractures again, bad stress fractures. I went to the national meet because I felt I should, but it was a disaster. I placed third at the Penn Relays in the 3 mile, and I ran 13:45 there, pretty good time. And I'd run, but the injury occurred up at Penn State. I ran a 6 mile against Charlie McGuire up at Penn State, 6 mile on the track. It was a cold day. It was 35 degrees, 40 degrees, and the track at Penn State was like a rock. And I came back from that, and I knew things were not good. And so I developed these stress fractures, and I was doing everything I could do, but I kept running through them, and that was a huge mistake. Had I stopped right away, let them get better for 6 weeks, but no, we had a track season ahead of us, and I ended up winning the conference championship in the 3 and the 6, but I could hardly run after that. I went out to national meet, and I was injured. The first race in my life, I didn't finish. And it was just devastating. I got a job teaching, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And I wasn't running for 3 or 4 months. Then the cross-country team at Lampeter Strasburg High School, that was my first teaching job, was at Lampeter Strasburg. The cross-country team asked me if I would run with them. They're doing a fundraiser where the number of miles you run, you get paid for it. So I said, okay, I'll do that. And I really didn't do anything up to that. I ran with the boys, and I thought, okay, my legs felt okay. After that, I started running, and I entered a road race in Harrisburg, and I won it on not much training at all. And I kept on winning. Then I entered a marathon because I always wanted to run a marathon. I went down to the Jersey Shore Marathon in Asbury Park, New Jersey, and I won it. I ran 2:24 in my first marathon down there, and it was fun. All of a sudden, I got hooked, and I didn't really know what I was going to do, and now all of a sudden, I had more of a focus. And I ran the Boston Marathon that year, and was 61st. And I was 20th place at the top of Heartbreak Hill, but coming down those big hills, my legs just cramped up like crazy. But that's the year that Bill Rogers won it for the first time. And so that was a lot of fun. That was 1976.
Yeah,
and then 76, I was like a monk. I was no longer training. Lampeter Strasburg, that was a 1-year temporary position. So I was at Conrad Weiser, and the cross-country coach and I were living together. I was like a monk. I started a girls cross-country team there, and I'd run with them. And then after the girls cross-country team practice, I'd go out and run again. And I was running in the mornings, and on the weekends, I was running for the Reading Athletic Addict, and I was running a lot of races. And 1976, the fall, in November, it all happened. The big race happened, and that was the AAU cross-country championships in Philly. Some of the absolute best runners in the United States were all there, and I got third in the nation. And the next thing, I had a contract with Brooks, and things really changed in my life at that time.
Let's go right up to that point. Were you logging miles, or how much had you trained, high school, university, and up to the AAU national champion?
Yeah, good question. I'd say in high school, I was probably running 30 to 35 miles a week. at Millersville. 50 would have been a good week, 50 to 60 maybe. I wish I would have done more, but I didn't, and I wish I would have. Once I got out of college, I started putting in miles, and then it became 90 to 100. And that's when my success really started to bloom.
Who were your training partners for that run through the marathon? And how long was that AAU national
That was
championship?
a 10K down at Belmont Plateau in Philadelphia. And
And who were you training with?
that's a good question. I was trained by myself. Did not train with anybody. I did all my running by myself. I wish I would have partners.
Roger Bannister method. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I would have trained. And if I go back and would do all this all over again, I would have a coach. And we didn't have the options like they do today, having these enclaves of runners. That would have really helped me become a better runner than I was. I just basically ran by myself all the time. And yeah, I did that until I started coaching at Millersville. Then I'd run with the Millersville guys. That was a plus for me, running with Greg Collar and that gang. So
let's talk about the central Pennsylvania. Pretty developed running area, even in the 60s with the AAU club. The road races were coming, the white rose, the red rose races that developed through there. How was racing coming? I especially want to talk about the appearance of women. You started a high school women's team.
Yes.
When were women showing up in the road races?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I knew a gal from Elizabethtown, Carol Fridley, and she held the 10-mile American record. I can't tell you how fast she ran, but I knew she held the record. And there were not a lot of women in the beginning of my running career. I did know Chris Bankus and Beth Guerin. They both ran the Reading Athletic Attic with me. Chris Bankus won the U.S. Olympic trials in the marathon in 1980. And Beth also placed in that race. So we had some women. And I knew some people that were those ultra marathon types. There was a guy named Park Barner out of the Harrisburg area, and he was world famous. He was supposed to run the C&O Canal, which is 180 miles, in 3 days. He said, I'm going to run it in 1 day. He was that kind of guy. And I met some real characters along the way. And then I'd run against Park Barner in marathons and 5Ks. He'd run those too, but he was a real long distance ultra guy.
When you got that girls team started, where were those athletes coming from? Were they runners, or who went out for cross country?
Another good question. Well, Diane Yo was my number one runner, and she was a field hockey player. I had her at the end of the year, and she'd run Saturday invitationals for me. But the rest of the girls were just younger. I made an announcement on the PA system at school. Anybody that wants to come out for the team, and I only had 6 or 7 girls on the team. But we ended up third in the district, which was pretty cool. Yeah, I had a great time with those girls. And yeah, they all came to my wedding too. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Nice. I want to talk about your coaching at Millersville and your experience there, winning a national championship. But let's talk about Brooks. What was that like? How did that negotiation? How did you find out? What did you get?
There was a guy named Ron Stanko who was on our board of directors of the Reading Athletic Attic, and he went to Villanova with Marty LaCourie. So this all starts with Marty LaCourie and his gang, the Brooks team, and the Athletic Attic. We had the Athletic Attic in Reading, and then the national team. After 1976, locally I'd run for Reading, but in the bigger meets I always ran for the national team. And that team was made up of Marty LaCourie, Greg Fredericks, Barry Brown, me. We were the main cogs on that team. Then a little later on, Rod Dixon came over, and he was living in Reading, Pennsylvania. So he's right up he's right up the road from me. So Rod and I would get together sometimes. Let me tell you a great story. You'll like this one. In Philadelphia, they have a Philadelphia Pacers relay night, and it's at Ursinus College. And Rod wanted to do just a speed workout. So he called me up and said, Rod, would you get some kids or whoever? And I want to run some relays down in Philadelphia in this Philadelphia Pacers meet. And I said, okay. And what are you going to run? He said, I'll run a couple 800s for you. So I rounded up some of my Hempfield kids and some Millersville kids and some of the better kids that were on the AAU team that I was part of. I got a guy out of Garden Spot High School would run like 50 flat in the quarter, which is pretty good. And Greg Collar and a guy named Jeff Groff, and they were like 158, 2-minute 800 runners. I ran too. And we ran a distance medley, and we ran sprint medley and a 4x800. And I think Rod ran the 4x8 and the sprint medley, and he anchored both of them with a 150. My kids from the Hempfield team and the Millersville team just could. This is one of the greatest things that ever happened in their lives. They got to run with Rod Dixon, and we had just such a fun time with those kids. So that's a great story of Rod Dixon.
Let me divert on Rod Dixon here. I was just down in New Zealand for another kind of running party event, and we were in Nelson. We saw Split Apple Rock, where Rod and spent some time. He has a very interesting life story. I'm not going to talk about him without having him talk about, but maybe are you in touch with him?
I'm not, no more.
I would like to try to track him down, and he just encourages kids to run. And he was back in New Zealand getting all these kids running, but I have a feeling he looks at life quite differently than he did in his 20s and 30s. And
right.
He seems like a really nice guy. I don't know him. I've never met him.
He was a very nice person. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll try to track him down. I was just reading about him. Said, I was kayaking past that Split Apple Rock down in Abel Tasman National Park. Maybe he'll just want to talk to somebody about that, and I can get him on. Brooks, you were running for them. You were getting flown around, getting gear, everything you needed for that.
Yeah. I didn't do a lot of that. I went out to California to run in the National Track Championship, and they gave me a lot of gear. They gave me a little stipend that I could get massages and things like that, which I never did enough with that. I was teaching and coaching the whole time, which took a lot of my life up. Coaching at Millersville in the fall and Hempfield in the spring and winter and spring, and teaching full time. And I didn't travel that much. If I could do it all over again, I would have liked to take a couple years without teaching and just go for it in the running world, just see how far I could have gone. But anyway, we all wonder sometimes.
You had a spectacular personal racing career. You've had a spectacular coaching career. It's hard to tell which one you've been more successful in.
I've been very blessed.
You won the national championship with Millersville. What was the outlook at the beginning of that year?
That's a good question, but let me just go back. So in 1979, Cy Fritz, who I'd run for, asked me if I would like to join the staff, and he had no assistant in cross country. I said, okay, I'll do that. And so for the next 7 years, I coached at Millersville. In 1979, when I joined, Greg Collar, who I coached in high school at Hempfield, went to University of Pennsylvania. Then he transferred to Millersville. He didn't like running in the streets or on the track at Penn all the time. He liked to just run, and he didn't like crossing streets all the time. So he transferred to Millersville. And we had another guy, Al Treffinger, and I think they finished like 1-2 in the conference meet that year. We had Eric Studell out of Governor Mifflin, and we started getting some guys from North Penn, Andy Kalsmer. Just had a great team. A guy out of Warwick High School, an 800 runner, but once he started going longer, he did great. Donnie Williams. But the year before, in 1980, my second year, Greg Collar was playing basketball after practice and broke his leg. That was not good. We had just a number of injuries. And listen to this. In 1980, Millersville was next to last in the conference championship. We beat Cheney. We were next to last. We only had 1 or 2 of our starting runners on that squad because everybody's just beat up. The next year, the leadership of Greg Collar and this Donnie Williams out of Warwick High School, they were just great leaders. And they got all these new recruits. Billy King came in, and Eric was there. Paul Bowman out of Garden Spot, who had just done well in the state meet, We got them all together, and the year just got better and better. And they were running mornings, they were doing the afternoon workouts, and they were just dedicated to each other. You could see the community that they had together. Everything just went as it should. And that year we were second in the conference to Edinburgh. Indiana was third. We went to the regional meet. We were second. Indiana won the region meet, and Edinburgh was third. We went to the national meet up in Boston at Lowell, Massachusetts, and we actually beat Edinburgh by 2 points, 97 to 99. And Paul Bowman was a kid out of Garden Spot, but he always came on late in the season. We were lucky. It was only because of an injury he made our varsity team. And so he's running in the national meet, but we could tell he was just getting better and better. And it came down to the last mile, and Paul's starting to pass people left. He's just going gangbusters coming in. And then he went from like 70th to 50th in the last mile. And that 50th place, he passed tons of people coming down the final straight. And we won by 2. And just a miracle. It was just a miracle. And I'll never forget, one of the highlights of my life was that in the old days, they used to put on the board, every coach would add up their numbers of their sticks, and then they post them up on this big board. And we kept waiting and waiting. And finally, the last number went up on the board and we won. And it's just a great celebration. So, yeah, that was fantastic. Coaching at Millersville. For the next couple years, our Millersville teams were phenomenal. We were getting great recruits. The best runners from our area were all coming to Millersville, and we had just a fantastic time. Then Cy retired, and things went a little bit down, retired. And then they took our program away from us, which one of the saddest days of my life, when they took the cross-country and track program out of Millersville University.
What was behind that?
They say Title IX, but I don't think it was really Title IX. They just wanted a way to get rid of the cross-country program and track.
But you had the high school coaching. It was ongoing there.
Yeah, during the whole time, I was still coaching at Hempfield. I coached there as a head coach for 29 years. We never had a losing season. I had kids at home, and it was a lot harder when I was coaching and I had children at home. But then when they left the house and I decided I'm going to really get into this indoor track, that's what really started the whole thing. And I retired in 2009. So really my last 10 years, we just went gangbusters. We were traveling all over. We were going to Penn State. We go to Yale. We started going to all these indoor meets, and kids are saying, wow, I want to be on a team that goes to Yale or Penn State. And we go up to the Armory in New York and we run races up there. And I just started getting good kids out for the team. And my last year of coaching, we won the league meet, we won the district meet, and we won the state PIAA, AAA, the big school, beating Altoona by 2 points to win the state title in track and field. So my final season, I decided that's a good way to go out. And,
Absolutely.
yeah. Then after that, I continued coaching, but just coaching distance runs instead of being the head coach. And I love doing that. And then 2011, Hempfield won the state title again. It was interesting, though. In 2009, I had a miler who got third, an 800 runner who got second. I had an intermediate hurdler who got third, and I had a pole vaulter that won. He gets first place. And then we had a relay team, a 4x4 that was really good, and they got 6th or 7th, a 400 runner who was 7th, and we scored 38 in the state meet. The year in 2011, we won the state meet. I had a discus shot putter who got 2 firsts. So there's 20, a javelin thrower who gets third. So right there's 26. And I always knew how to make milers. And I had a miler that got a 7th. We had 28, and that was enough to beat Strathaven that year. So we won another state title in 2011, but with throwers instead of runners.
When you were head coach, how much were you contributing to the coaching of the runners that weren't distance runners? Did you learn those skills?
I learned those skills, but I also learned that my job as a head coach was to delegate. And I had great assistant coaches, very dedicated assistants. And so, yeah, we talked about workouts and all. And I would really be in charge of the mile relay. I love to take my teams down to Penn relays every year and run. But no, I had a great sprint coach who was with me for all 29 years. So I let him really make the decisions on the sprinters. I had great throwing coach, and I loved to watch the shot and the discus and javelin, but I never told those kids what to do. And I had a good jumping coach. We had a great team of coaches, and I just was very fortunate. So I could spend my time overall as a head coach and then coaching the distance runners. And I had distance running from 800 on up. So
Nice.
yeah, I was very fortunate.
You're a very appreciative guy, Jeff. You spread the appreciation around. In addition to all this that we've talked about today, you're still running.
I'm not really, I'm doing a lot more biking than I'm running.
Okay, but let's talk about that. Maybe the last 15 years or so, you were still jumping in some running and racing, right?
Not really. I ran a 5K a couple of years ago, but I haven't run a race in probably about 2 years now. My knees just aren't working the way they need to. But on the bicycle, my knees work fine. I've really made a transition to more of a cyclist rather than a runner. But I still have my hand in. I got to tell you a little story here. This weekend, I was in the French Alps. One of my runners in 2007, Zach Miller, and I just had a special relationship with him. He was a 10:05 2-miler for me in high school. So he would get seconds and thirds. Once in a while, he might get a first in a dual meet. He's always been close to me. When I rode my bicycle across America, he rode the last day of that ride with me. He came all the way down to Richmond and rode into Yorktown with me. I rode from Key West to Bar Harbor on my bicycle. And on the last day, he drove all the way to Maine and rode the last day with me. I also rode from Pittsburgh to DC with him and one of my other 800 runners. And the four of us, all the runners, we had a great time. So we rode bicycles on that. But anyway, so Zach was a good runner. He went to RIT then and was a runner for RIT. Again, no conference titles or anything like that. I think he might got some medals in the 10K. He's an engineer out of RIT. He gets a job on a cruise ship. He goes around the world and starts getting off at every port and running. And he's running and running. And he comes back to Hempfield to one of our cross-country practices. And I'm the assistant coach at Hempfield and cross country at this time. He tells me I'm doing all these runs everywhere. I said, oh, okay. Let's go up to Blue Marsh, the lake up in Reading. There's a 30-mile trail around it. It's a rugged trail. And I got my bicycle. We sat in the car after that workout, the 30 miles around the lake. And I said, Zach, you need to get a long race. He said, do you know of any races here that I could get into? I said, I've heard about this race in Washington called the JFK 50-miler. I did a little research and I said, I know the meet director, Mike Spinier, and I said, give him a call and tell him that I recommend you run the race. And he called Mike, and Mike said, I can't let you in as an elite, but I'll let you run the race. So our entries are closed, but I'll let you run the race. There was a runner in that field, Rob Carr, who was the ultra marathon runner of the year in the United States. And Zach got in that race, the 50-miler. And at 42 miles into the race, Zach pulled away from Rob Carr and won the race in the third fastest time ever run in JFK 50-miler. 2 weeks later, Zach sends me his contract from Nike. He said, what do you think of this? I said, I really don't know, but it looks pretty good to me. They're paying you a lot of money and they're going to pay for all this. So he ran for Nike for a couple of years, and he's run races all over the world. So this weekend, I went to the French Alps, flew into Geneva, then took a bus down to Chamonix. There's a race called the UTMB. There's 8 races there that week. And the last race is a 106-mile around Mount Blanc. And so I went over. His parents said, would you like to go over and see the race? I said, yeah, I'd really like to see this. And the excitement is incredible. If you get a chance, just go on your computer, type UTMB, and just check it out. And Zach gets second in the world. Second in the world.
Wow.
He ran 19 hours. They're running 7-minute miles up and down the Alps in snow. you can't even imagine how this race was, how difficult that race was, and he was second. And so I just was over there this weekend celebrating this great kid. Oh my gosh. And he's not even built like a runner. He's 5'6". He's about 155 pounds. Most of these people were skinny guys, tall, skinny guys. Not Zach. He's a tank, but he's strong and determined and works so hard. So he lived at bar camp at 10,000 feet for 3 years. So he would develop his incredible story. Zach Miller. Yeah. Remember that name. He's just absolutely amazing.
Maybe he'll come over here and talk about that stuff too, although he's not a 70s runner.
Not a 70s runner, but he would be a great interviewer. And in Europe, he's a rock star. His parents told me about this, and I didn't really believe it. We couldn't walk down the street. People would stand and cheer for him everywhere he went. I've never seen anything like it in my life. In America, he can walk wherever he wants and nobody's going to know him because he doesn't play basketball or football. He's a great kid and so talented.
Yeah, it's an amazing place. I went skiing there.
Yeah,
in the Three Valleys, Chamonix, over from Geneva, took a bus over, and yeah, it's a scary looking place with snow on it, and to go downhill. So running up through those hills, and I have some friends who've done the Mont Blanc run. Over the past years, but it's an amazing sport.
Yeah, if you're looking for some more ultra marathoners, Charlie Trayer is a great name, and Park Barner. But Charlie Trayer, he's very interesting too. He was one of the top ultra marathoner. He used to keep winning that race from Philadelphia to New York City. He's not a trail runner, but he's an ultra road runner.
What was the idea that got you to do these first ultra long bike rides?
It's interesting. The minister at our church, he rode across America. He took a sabbatical from our church and he rode across America, and he had a map there in our narthex, and every week there'd be pins where he was, and I kept looking at, wow, I'd like to do that. And I know I'm going to retire. I retired from teaching in 2009. So I thought in 2010, I would really like to do that. So I told my wife, I'm going to ride across America and I'll see you in 6 weeks. And she said, oh no, I'm going to go with you. So she drove the SAG wagon, and I rode from Oregon to Virginia 1 year. 2 years later, we went from Key West to Bar Harbor. In 2015, we went from Vancouver, British Columbia down to Tijuana on the West Coast. And this year, I just did 8 days of biking on the island of Menorca, which is off of the coast of Spain, with my wife. She did it with me. 8 days on this little island in Spain. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. So I really like the biking. And next year, I think we're going to Denmark and doing a bike adventure too.
Oh, that's great. Maybe some people bump into you. I lived in Cairo for 15 years in Egypt. Okay. And at one point, a British guy, I don't know if he was royalty, certainly an upper class guy, and he was a 400 hurdler, Britain champion, schoolboy. And he was like a Guess jeans model, and he was 6'4". And we heard that he had gotten stuck. He wanted to run the continent of Africa, and he got stuck at the Egyptian-Sudan border from Egyptian administration. And the things broke down with his buddy. He went down to South Africa and ran the whole way up. Okay. Then when he got to Cairo, he called the running group, the Hash House Harriers at Cairo, and said, hey, could you guys escort me in? I'm coming in from the desert. I'm going to finish later today from the suburbs. I'm going to run over and finish at the pyramids, and Princess Anne saved the children. I'm donating money for it and everything. So he said, yeah, we'll go get you. One guy, a good runner, said, I'll go out and meet him in the desert and bring him in 6 miles breakfast, and then we'll escort him over to the roads are a little dodgy there. Yep. We're locals more comfortable. And we thought, oh, well, we ought to run with this guy. How fast can he be going? Somebody who had just run 20 to 30 miles a day was in pretty good shape. So after 3 or 4 miles running out of the suburbs, heading towards the pyramids, we're like, we're not going to be able to keep up with this guy. So we had the shuttle van. And I said, take me about a mile or two from the pyramids and just drop me off there. You guys run with him. I'll be there at the end because I can run up the hills to the pyramids. He had lost everybody then. So I just got him, and I think we were past all the dangerous areas. But we run up to the Great Pyramids of Egypt, of Giza, and we go up that hill. It's just he and I at this point. And he has a big support vehicle from his sister who we hadn't seen for a bit. And we go running, and we get up, and we see some people at the bottom by the Sphinx. I said, "Do you want to go down there?" She says, "No, I want to finish at the pyramid. There's got to be a finish line." We ran up. We ran the whole way around Cheops, and I guess there's no finish line. And it was like Forrest Gump. He had just run the continent of Africa, and he said, "Okay, I'm done." And he stopped.
That's funny.
We gave him a beer. He chugged a beer, and we said, "Okay." And then he went down to the reception. So he was running probably 20 to 30 miles a day through these, and he got malaria a couple times. There's some good stories too. Did you know Fred LeBeau? Did you run New York?
Yeah. Yeah, I know Fred LeBeau.
Yeah. So Fred came over to Egypt as a consultant. And I ran that. I was not in shape. I just ran the marathon because number one was available if I ran the marathon. So I pinned on number one of the first marathon around the pyramids, down to Saqqara, around the back. And the water stop left after we went by. So out and back, there was no water on the way home. And Fred LeBeau in the debrief, he had 4 runners, non-elite, just brought over some runners. He said, "Don't do this, and don't do this again here."
Yeah.
It was pretty funny. So it was a good place to live because people did come through. Ron Hill maybe came through.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these guys post-career would do a sponsored run, show up, wear a shirt, and get a free trip to exotic places. So we got to see some of those guys that were there too.
I tell my kids that if you're a distance runner in high school, there are just so many avenues for you today that you go into. You go into the marathoning, the road races, the endurance bike races. There's just so many, adventure racing. I think there's just so many options for endurance sports.
Jeff, we didn't know each other. I think we might have been at the same meets a couple times. Maybe we were running, maybe we were in the audience together because I followed track before I left the continent. But you also have another feature to your life. You've given back to the sport as a coach, as a race director, but you've also gotten involved with the boys clubs.
I'm part of a group called Life Cycles, and it's more biking. It's not running. And we take these boys all over America. Like I've led a group from Pittsburgh to DC on a bike 6 days for the last 4 years. Yeah, I've been doing that. And I just love that part of my life where I can be with kids. I'm a people person when it comes to, I like kids. We chose not to live in a 55 and over community. I want to have kids around. I have grandkids and I love playing with them, but I really still like these junior high school kids. I just think they're just a great thing, great people, and they're still moldable, which I think is pretty cool.
Let's talk about competition. As a successful elite athlete, winning, how did you handle when you didn't win? How did you handle the transition out of competition? What did you talk about with the people you coached, with the kids that you do the biking with, on the idea of competition?
Yeah, the biking is really not about competition. Though some of the boys in that program have now started doing competitions. We had one boy that just decided he was going to ride up and do that race up Mount Washington, which is craziness. It was canceled this year because of bad weather 2 days in a row. But I am very competitive. Sometimes I wish I wasn't as competitive, but I think it's what drove me to great success. I had a brother and we just competed from the day we were born. And I think it made me very competitive. So if we were playing tiddlywinks, I'm going to try to beat you. And I think that served me well over the years because when we ran races, I didn't like to lose. I didn't handle well when I didn't win. But I learned from losing. And I think losing is really an important part of being a champion. Learning from your mistakes. What did I do wrong? What can I do better the next time? Learning strategies that work for you because some strategies aren't good. I used to be a runner who lead from the front. First step out of the gate, I wanted to be first. I soon learned that that was really not the best way to run the great races. You got to learn to conserve your energy and use it at the end if you possibly can. I always had a great kick, which I could depend on at the end of a race. So my running style changed over the year from being a leader to more of a follower towards the end. And I'd always teach my kids, and track and field, I always tell them the hunter is the one that wins the race. The hunted, if you're coming off that last turn and you're in first, you're going to lose that race most of the time. It's the person that's on his shoulder that's going to win that race. So I taught that to my kids all the time, and I think it is a good strategy.
And how did you run the marathon? What was your best marathon?
I never really ran a great marathon. I ran 2:19 down in Maryland Marathon. Ron Hill and I ran that one. I would get out pretty quickly in those races too. That was early in my career when I was a marathon runner. I won Harrisburg twice, 2:22 and 2:23. I won the Jersey Shore Marathon, 2:24. I was second in the Jersey Shore, 2:23. Won the Nittany Valley one up in Penn State in a snowstorm. Why you have a marathon in January in Penn State is beyond me. Why I ran it is another thing that I never really understood. And then I ran this Maryland Marathon, and Boston I ran a couple times too. Boston, I was third at the halfway point in 1976. That was called the Run for the Hoses, if you remember that one. And the sun was like 100 degrees. And I'll tell you what, did the heat ever get to me in the second half of that race? I felt so good for half of the race. And then I guess I just didn't have enough water in me. And that was really, I never figured out how to stay hydrated in a marathon. Then the Maryland Marathon, that was my best, 2:19. So, and again, I liked that marathon because of all the hills. They have a famous hill called Satter Hill, and I like that hill. And hills were always my friends. And when 1976, when we went down the Belmont Plateau, but it has Shirk Hill, Parachute, Nursery Hill. It has famous hills all the way. That's why I ran so well down there. And that was the race of my life that changed everything.
Yeah. What about your work as race director? Were you fully in charge of the race that you organized?
I was a race director for a number of local races, but never a big race. I would help people. I actually was an editor for Running Review magazine. Started out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, running, and we put all results of all races in, and that was what we did special. And while I was an editor there, I got involved with a lot of people. They'd call there and say, I need help, and I would go in and help them organize races. But no, I was not really a big-time race director, local races.
Okay, so the change in the sport. If somebody said, what happened since 1970 to the sport? Is it good, bad, indifferent, inevitable? How do you think the sport of track and distance and road racing changed?
That's a really good question. I think the elite are more elite than ever, but I think the general population of running is not nearly as good. We have a race in Lancaster called the Red Rose Run. And for years, I'd run into 24s, and then Steve Spence eventually ran into 23s. And yeah, it was very competitive. In fact, when I was 40 years old, I ran 25:30 for 5 miles on this hilly course, and I was like 40th place. Today, 26 minutes wins the race, and I just don't get it. I don't get it. The general races are not nearly as fast, but the elite races are faster than ever. Yeah.
Do you think it's a dilution with more sports?
That's
soccer?
part of it. There's so many options out there. The biking and the adventure racing, there's so many options for people to do anymore. And soccer has taken its toll. Soccer takes a lot of people away. But a lot of people go back to running at the end because they realize they can't find 10 other people to play soccer with all the time. And I just think we used to run the Millersville Turkey Trot every year, those 10 miles. And that lost popularity because people didn't want to run 10 miles anymore. Now it's a 5K and it's very popular. So for 5 miles, anybody can do that. But 10 miles on a hilly course doesn't really happen for a lot of people. It's not the running boom of the 70s. That was just a great time when running was, when everybody wanted to work hard to be good. And it's a special time. And I'm really glad you do this podcast because it's pretty special. It was a good time.
Yeah, that's a good way to wrap up. I want to ask you about one accomplishment and one thing that happened I don't think has come up, and that was your membership as a part of the national team, the National Cross Country Masters team.
Oh, the Masters in Boston, they ran a Masters at the World Cross Country Championship. And I turned 40 that year, and the World Cross Country Championships were in Boston. I said, I got to do it. And I had an injury just prior to that, but boy, we got a team from Reading together, and we went up to Boston. They had a snowstorm there, and they changed the course because there was snow all over the course. They changed it, but it was so much fun, and I ran really well. I got 7th that year in the Masters World Cross Country Championship. That was really special. They thought us Masters would ruin the course, and we probably would have because of all the snow. But I remember that was the year Vicky Huber. Remember her? She was a great runner out of Villanova. Vicky Huber was like 3rd in the World Cross Country Championship up in Boston. Special time for me. I loved watching the races, but I loved running in it too. Yeah, that was a fun time. Being a Masters runner was like a second chance for me. When I turned 40, I started going around to all these road races, winning some money, and it was a lot of fun. My goal was always to win enough money to pay for my airfare. And I was pretty successful when I was in my early 40s. So.
That's great. The other thing I reflected on, just fun, Beaver Stadium. My sophomore year, they still had PIAA track states there. In that wind tunnel stadium, I sprained my ankle in lane 1 just on the nasty track in the 2-mile relay. It's just great memories to think about that. And they moved when they moved to Shippensburg. I had a 2-mile relay team and got second when we moved to Shippensburg in high school. And my PSAC race against Muggleton was on that Shippensburg track.
Let me tell you a quick story. In 1970, we ran the first track meet on that track for the PSAC championship. And the first year, it was that green surface, and the high jumpers couldn't jump. They would get up and slip. And it was just so slippery, nobody could compete on it. Now, the runners, it was okay. And it was fantastic. It certainly beat running on that old square track at Shippensburg. Shippensburg Invitational used to be in that square track, had 4 90-degree turns, and then a runway over here. But they opened it up, and then after that, they put some sandy paste over top of it so people wouldn't slip so much on the track. But the first year was just a disaster.
I think it was a fast track. That was a great track. Yeah,
I remember. And you're Western PA. I ran the PSACs there as a freshman. And my best time ever in the mile going into the PSAC meet was 4:23. And 2 guys from Slippery Rock, a guy named Gralewski, who died a number of years later, he won the race. And then another Slippery Rock guy. And then I was 3rd at 4:14. It was a 9-second PR for me that day.
Wow.
It was a good track for running. Wasn't real good for jumping, though. The jumpers just hated that track. Can I tell you one more story?
Yeah.
Okay. One of my favorite races that I ran every year was the Cherry Blossom in Washington, D.C. I love the Cherry Blossom race. And one year I went down there and Bill Rogers ran, and I was ahead of Bill Rogers for 8 miles. And then he ended up beating me at the end. And after the race, the New Yorker magazine was there, and Bill was being interviewed, and they had me off to the side somewhere. And they asked Bill, did you know Jeff Bradley was in this race? Oh yeah, I knew he was in there. I always scout out my competition. That was a bunch of baloney. He never heard of me before. I'm sure of that. But anyway, I got second to Bill Rogers that year, and that was pretty cool. And then the next year, or maybe a year after that, went down there again. I ran 48:11 and got only 9th place. Malcolm East and I battled for that whole time. I think he might have got me by 1 place. We were close together, but that was Bill Rogers and Randy Thomas and the gang from Boston was down there. And the 10-mile was really my sweet spot, I think, when it came to racing. I just really like that distance. So good memories, and the 1970s were real special for me.
Yeah, that's great.
The shoes we wore, you talked about I think they were called Adidas Antelopes. They were like blue with white stripes, and there was nothing to them. They were sprint spikes. They were distance spikes. They were whatever spike you needed. There was nothing to them.
These shoes did you use those? Did you run on the grass?
I was Brooks, and I got later signed by Saucony. I had 7 years with Brooks and 7 years with Saucony. I never wore the Nikes.
I think in 1976, IUP handed out Villanovas. That was our default shoe.
I wore Villanovas all the time for training. Yeah. I had a great deal. Brooks, I could go to the running store, the Inside Track in Lancaster, and get my Brooks anytime I wanted to. All my friends, if they wore my size shoe, they were in business because I got a pair of shoes every month. And I really felt that's how I stayed healthy. I stayed in good shoes all the time. Once a pair of shoes got to 500 miles, I really felt that was the end of their life for me. That good rubber kept me healthy.
Did you rotate shoes, or did you wear the same shoes every?
I would rotate shoes. Yeah, I had shoes that I'd wear in the morning for my runs, which would often get very wet. I had a course that was primarily in grass in the morning, and then I had another pair in the afternoon. I think another reason that I was an interesting person as far as running. I did road races, I did track, and I did cross country through all my years. I always loved the combination of all those facets. I love to keep the speed of track. And we had these Millersville all-comer meets every Wednesday night in Millersville. And we always had good competition. Oh my God. Rod Dixon would run in those sometimes. Rod Dixon still holds the Millersville track record for 1,500 meters. I was a distant second to him that day. And I think I ran 3:55 and he was like 3:47 or 3:48 or something like that. Yeah, was the real deal. Then cross country, I always like to go back up that Penn State cross country meet that we ran. I thought that was a lot of fun. And then we had some masters meets in cross country. And of course, the road and the marathon. I think all the variety keeps it a lot of fun. I also like to do the miles, the York Street Mile and the Market Street Mile in York, and those kind of things that just added spice to it. So anyway, that's how I kept it going.
Yeah, it's been great talking to you, Jeff. I think all the people across your paths will enjoy hearing from you. And if they haven't been in touch for a while, hearing about these bike races you've done and the work that you're still doing with kids, it's pretty inspiring.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matthew. I just love talking about this. So it's just a lot of fun.
Thanks for all your time, Jeff. It's great.
Matthew, thank you. I enjoyed talking to you.
I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.